Belle Isle is a 900-acre state park on an island adjacent to downtown Detroit. Once a year, its roadways turn into a speedway, and thousands have come on a beautiful day to see the Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel, a unique doubleheader weekend for the Verizon IndyCar Series. All of the stars of the sport, race winners, and those who hope to be, racing not once, but twice on this very challenging and physically demanding course. Many of the fans will be here cheering for this man, Will Power, who last Sunday saw a lifetime dream come true at Indianapolis. Some 300,000 here for the 102nd running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Will Power is in fourth. We are watching to see if he just inherits that lead, if Sylvia Wilson and Jack Harvey have to come in.
Tony Kanaan is into the wall and the yellow flag is out, coming to the green flag on a late restart to see who wins at Indianapolis. Here comes Wilson, looking on Serbia for the lead. Harvey to the inside, Power in the silver car. Wilson gets it. Power breaks to the outside and he'll get to third place.
Stefan Wilson, does he have enough fuel?
Oh, he's going to have to pit. And Harvey pits. And Will Power takes the lead at Indianapolis. Checkered flag, Power and Penske win it. From now on, it'll be Will Power, Indianapolis 500 winner.
Well, Will Power, you did it. You won the Indy 500, and here's the question. What was the week like? How busy was it?
It was busy. We left the banquet on Monday night for New York, got there 3 a.m., or got to bed 3 a.m., I think, and up at 6, and then all day, cocktail party at night till like 9:30, then to the airport. I think 2 a.m. we landed in Dallas and had something at 8 o'clock, so yeah, and then all day that day, but it wasn't bad. I was loving it, you know. Yeah, it's not often you get to do that, so I'm all good.
All right, so let's talk about how hard is it to come to Detroit, have 2 races, and click back in and try to win these?
Yeah, it's such a short weekend too because you only get a little bit of practice. Qualifying's 12 minutes, that's it. And you got to perform straight away. So, yeah, it's grueling, but it's such a cool track. Like, you've got to manhandle the car around, man. There is no other track on the schedule or street course like this.
Well, Will Power has won the last 2. He's going for 3 in a row today.
And hello from the Motor City. Alan Bestwick, Eddie Cheever, Scott Goodyear. Glad to be with you here from Detroit. How much fun, before we get to today's race, how much fun was that last Sunday at the Speedway?
That great race. You know, when you think about Indianapolis, you think of great finishes. We certainly have that. You know, I think about Will Power and the pressure that goes on Penske drivers to win the Indianapolis 500. And I saw him this morning at the drivers' meeting. I said, hey, congratulations first off. I said, how you feeling? He just went, relieved. A weight off my shoulders, which really in the case is, as a Penske driver, as I mentioned last week, you're going to have to win the Indianapolis 500 sooner or later if you want to remain a Penske driver, and the pressure that goes along with it, Eddie.
What I really enjoyed watching was that emotional explosion he had in the winner's circle, and his emotions were way up here. Then we see him a week later, and he's, oh yeah, getting ready for the race. It's kind of a difficult circuit. So he's right back where he needs to be, and he is ready today. But it's a little bit different. He's now the Indianapolis 500 champion.
And he will forever be introduced that way. It's a different challenge this weekend for the drivers. Comparison side by side of Indianapolis a week ago and Detroit here today.
You know, Indianapolis is all about smoothness, small movements with the steering wheel, being very mentally strong. And then when you go to Belle Isle on your right-hand side, this place is brutal, Eddie, as you know, because you and I drove here, and these guys got to do it twice in one weekend. We only ever had to do it once.
That is true, but there is no series in the world like IndyCar where you have to go to such extremes as the Indianapolis 500 and then a bumpy circuit like this. I think these guys get here in 3 laps and they just switch something in their head and they're ready to go. Like I said, they don't do this anywhere else but here.
It is a fascinating contrast in styles from Indianapolis to here at Belle Isle. Well, someone who flipped that switch rather quickly was Marco Andretti, who this morning won pole position for the first time since 2013. Now Jan Beek is trying to win a race for the first time since 2011.
And Alan, it was an impressive lap for Marco Andretti, scoring your first pole position on a road or street course. What's the sensation when you lay down that perfect lap right when it counts?
It's not a lot better feelings actually. It felt pretty good. You know, it's been a long time coming. I've been on so many outside poles and it's been frustrating. But the road and street course pole has eluded me. But it was good to get my 5th. Still have another shot tomorrow, but I want one more on the win tally. That's what I've been working on.
This has been a track position race. You have the track position now. How difficult to defend, but at the same time, you have to look after your tires.
I actually think you could pass here pretty well. I think hopefully we can dictate the pace and look after the Reds for that long stint.
All right, Marco Andretti looking to finish this race where he starts it today, which is exactly what happened last year to the driver with Rick DeBrule.
Well, in fact, it was Graham last year who started on the pole, went on to win both these races. Now you're starting on the 4th row, and you're starting on black tires. Different strategy. What's the plan?
I just wanted to do something different. I pushed the guys to be unique today, and I didn't realize that nobody else would do blacks, but I didn't think anybody in front of us would, and that was kind of my idea, was just to that if the Reds do wear as bad as we think, then I could start on blacks, run hard, run long as the tires wear on the guys up front, be able to get by them. And last year that first stint is where we really made our mark. Nobody else could make the tire last, and we did, and it set us up for the rest of the day. So we're going to try to do the same for the United Rentals team today. The car hasn't been great this weekend, but it is what it is, and we'll certainly try to make the most of it.
All right, Graham Rahal trying to use strategy to win another one here in Detroit.
Going to be a big story on the day. The black sidewall tires versus the reds. The fuel strategy, 2 stops or 3, and the aggressiveness. Who can make the passes in the key spots on this course? Getting ready to go with the Detroit Grand Prix. The Start Engines command comes up next. Beautiful day here in Detroit for the Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Steel. First of a doubleheader back at this same time tomorrow here on ABC for race number 2. At Indianapolis, a week ago, we saw James Hinchcliffe bitterly disappointed after not making the field for the Indy 500. He's back. He's qualified 9th. Hopes to have a great bounce-back race today. And he's our track tour guide, presented by Mother's Polish.
And here we are for a lap of Belle Isle, the duels in Detroit. Here, across the start-finish line, bumping front straight into one of the fastest complexes you'll ever see on the street circuit. 120 miles an hour minimum. Good run out of turn 2 is key for the blast down to the best passing opportunity on the racetrack in turn 3. Hard on the brakes, down to 2nd gear. Transition onto concrete, which we're going to see for a lot of the lap here. Turn 4 here, tricky right combination. That leads onto the back straight. Turn 5, very bumpy on entry. Turn 6, uphill a little bit. Up a gear. Very important to get the good run out of turn 6. Use every inch of racetrack. Very bumpy back straightaway. They call it a straightaway, but as you can see, there's a lot of turning involved here. Difficult braking setup for turn 7. Opens up a little bit here on entry. Another good passing opportunity in the race. Here, the most technical section of the racetrack. Turn 9, full of gear. Long turn 10, balancing the throttle. Then hard on the brakes, keep it back in line. For turn 11, 55 miles an hour. First gear, good run out of here. Back down to the last section. 2 corners just under 90 degrees. Progressively faster on the throttle. And again, great lap here at Belle Isle.
It's busy, it's bumpy, and they've got to do that 70 times.
This racetrack, you think about it, it's not a permanent road circuit like, for instance, Barber or Mid-Ohio. This is the streets, as he talked about. And 2.3 miles of the roughest pavement that you had. He mentioned concrete, he mentioned the pavement, and manhole covers. And at the end of this race, you feel like you've been beat up for about an hour and a half.
And it's not just the drivers that are beat up, but the cars also. You have to be very careful with your equipment. And if you go wide anywhere, and it is easy to go wide, your race is done.
Yeah, there's no place to go with those concrete walls on both sides of the track. Now, this is the 7th race of the season for the Verizon IndyCar Series, the 3rd on road and street courses. The first 2, they have been wild and woolly for sure. This was the season opener, St. Petersburg, Florida. That's Alexander Rossi in the blue and yellow car, Robert Wickens in red and black, and Sebastian Bourdais that goes through.
Motor racing's a contact sport sometimes.
And a big win for Sebastian after a chaotic race. Then the streets of Long Beach, just as chaotic right from the start.
Look at Rahal. Got the brake, and that's what happened. But the best part of this race, we're going to see in a second here.
It's Rahal and Simon Pagenaud in the very first corner of the race. Here's that move. That's Sebastian Bourdais.
That's the pass of the decade right there.
He came screaming through about 5 cars into that one corner. Then Bourdais and Scott Dixon had the misfortune of being on the racetrack when a caution came out. They were trapped by that, had to rally back. Alexander Rossi dominated that day to score the win. So this is the third street course race of the season. What kind of chaos will we see today? That is the question as you have a look at beautiful Belle Isle Park. So Marco Andretti is today the day. 2011, the last time he won a race. James Hinchcliffe, can he rally back after the bitter disappointment at Indianapolis a week ago? There the field all lined up and ready to go. Good crowd on hand. Their ticket sales up like 15% from a year ago. And we expect a very exciting race getting ready to unfold. Down trackside, the dignitaries are gathered to give those famous words to get the Detroit Grand Prix started.
Race fans, are you ready? It's time for the most famous words in all of sports. Please welcome today's Grand Marshal of Detroit Lion quarterback, Eastern Michigan football alum, and Super Bowl champion, Charlie Badge.
Drivers, start your engines!
Would it be fair to say that Charlie Batch knows a thing or two about passing? Though this will be passing of a different type. They cover a lot more yardage per second in this kind of passing. Lap and a half away from the green flag to start the Detroit Grand Prix here at the Raceway at Belle Isle Park. The Honda two-seater, as always, out in front of the field. For more Honda racing content, check out HondaRacing.com. Zach Veach has one of our many onboard cameras in the field today. He's got the relay camera from 16th on the grid. Ed Jones with the NTT data onboard from 11th. We just heard from James Hinchcliffe. He's got the Lucas Oil onboard from 9th. Swept the weekend a year ago, Graham Rahal with the United Rentals on board, starting 8th. And the Indy 500 winner, Will Power, has a Verizon on board from 6th. Ryan Hunter-Ray, AutoNation onboard camera, starting 5th. And his Andretti Autosport teammate Alexander Rossi with an AutoNation on board, starting 4th. Robert Wickens has a Verizon on board from 3rd position. And our over-the-wall camera being carried by Brendan Cleve, who changes the outside front tire for Robert Wickens. And the pole sitter Marco Andretti has an AutoNation onboard, and he will lead this field to the green. Couple of more stories from pit road before we start. Jan?
Well, let's start with Scott Dixon. He starts on the outside of the front row by virtue of being the fastest in his qualifying group this morning. Now, he does get a championship point for that, but it's been all smiles for Scott Dixon and the team. He says, the car is much better. I like it here so much better than last year, especially across the bumps. Consider, he's 4th in the championship right now, driving cars he hasn't liked. Now it's a double race weekend with a car he does. Could be a turning point for Scott Dixon. Rick?
Well, last week when the cars lined up for the Indy 500, 8 of the 10 fastest qualifiers were Chevrolets. But that was a long oval. This is a bumpy street course. Today, it's the opposite. 8 of the 10 fastest are Hondas. And think about this. Of the 6 races run this year, 4 have been run by Chevys. However, the 2 that were won by Hondas were street courses. It was St. Pete and Long Beach. So what does that mean for today? I'll tell you in a couple hours.
That's right, Rick. So here we go. Pace car beginning to accelerate away from the field. Marco Andretti, the 7th different pole winner in the first 7 races of the season. First time that's happened in IndyCar racing since 1961. Who'll be first at the checkered flag? Will it be Andretti or Dixon or Power or any of the 23 drivers in this field? Here they come down toward the green flag. Scott Dixon on the outside of the front row. Andretti in white and purple leading them down to the start. Big passing spot on the racetrack coming up here. Turn 3. Wickens inside in the 6 on Rossi.
Oh, so very difficult to do. The brakes are cold, the tires are cold. Very nice move.
But that's when you have the biggest opportunity because everybody is very defensive in the beginning.
Turn 6 they're out of right now, down to 7. We saw that backstretch with James Hinchcliffe. It's not straight whatsoever. Very difficult braking section going in here to 7. Marco's got a good lead right away.
And Wickens is about to attack Dixon. Very tidy first lap.
Yeah, and I did not expect that whatsoever.
No, every time they go through 2 in the first part of these races, I'm holding my breath.
Can already see some of the bumps that we're talking about. This is just pounding on your spine every time you're through this turn.
So Marco Andretti will lead lap 1. Dixon is second, Wickens third, Rossi fourth, Hunter Ray fifth, and Takuma Sato in 6th place, followed by Graham Rahal.
You know what I think about, Alan, just as you're mentioning all the drivers that you went through in that lineup, what a lot of talent we have in this series right now, Eddie. Just all the championships and the race wins that are here. There's not really anybody you can look at that says they don't belong here.
And the first 9 cars are all Honda.
Defensive line by Pagenaud in the black and white 22. That was Tony Kanaan trying to get the spot, and he does it around the outside.
A little bit of a try and didn't want to let him go past. So the white and black car on the inside, Simon Pagenaud, he's trying to get the power down. Tony comes off the curbing and sort of like a bit of a hip check and going, pardon me, coming through.
Hip check. Well, we are close to Canada here.
Yeah, a little hockey.
I'm good with it. Zach Veach on board.
This is through what they call the fountain area back here. Very technical, very bumpy. Coming here to turn 11, you got to get a good run out of 11. Otherwise, guys get a shot on you going up through the turns 12, 13, 14, and maybe into 1.
Josef Newgarden seems to be struggling a little bit at the start of this race. He's got quite the line behind him.
One of the things that's hard to tell as you look at Newgarden here, what's the plan? 2 stops or 3? How much fuel might you be saving?
But you saw him turn into the turn there in turn 1, turn the steering wheel, and a big correction because the car was very nervous underneath him. Now the car might come around for him a little bit. It might start to settle in and get more comfortable. But here it's all about attacking under braking, trying to carry the speed mid-turn and getting the power down on the bumpy racetrack we have.
We need to also keep our eye on Rahal because he's on a different tire strategy. So we'll see how his set of blacks, which are harder tires will do at this first stint.
We have to talk about the big temperature difference from yesterday. Remember, we were probably 15, 20 degrees, maybe more warmer yesterday, ambient temperature, which also led to hotter track temperature. And the red tires, as we know, wear out a little quicker, and they would fall off earlier in that heat cycle that we had yesterday. Today, though, it would say that maybe the reds will stay under people longer.
And the more laps they do, the more rubber that's on the track. But right now, Dixon has Andretti in his sights.
On board Hunter Ray. Dixon tracking the race leader, Hunter Ray running back in 5th position. You heard the report from Jan a little bit ago. Scott Dixon, where he is in the championship with a car they were still trying to figure out. Now he's on the front row here for this race as they get more and more data gathered and begin to sort the car out. Scott talked about after the road course race at Indianapolis a few weeks ago how the team was having to maybe come away from some of its old tried and true ways of thinking about the setup and the engineering of a race car to get it to where this new car would perform for them the way that they wanted. Well, they had a solid month of May at Indianapolis for sure, and here he is starting on the front row and stalking the race leader, Marco Andretti.
And he's gaining every time they turn up into the braking zone, and the braking zone here is the hardest part, I think, because it's so bumpy. I really liked what Power said, that you have to manhandle the car around here. You've got to just pick it up and force it to do things that it doesn't want to do.
Remember when we were finished years ago, you'd actually look like somebody took an orange peeler to the palms of your hands, just peeling the skin off because you're so abusive on the steering wheel. And in the early days when we came here, obviously we were using a stick shift in the car. Today they got paddle shifters and just not taking their hands off the steering wheel, but still very physical.
Yes, that was a map of the track you saw on the steering wheel from Robert Dixon's visor cam. Don't want to get lost around here. Take a right when you're supposed to take a left. It can kind of hurt. Pretty good race here for 9th, 10th, and 11th. James Hinchcliffe 5, Spencer Piggott 21, the green car, and Ed Jones in the 10, the blue car. While we watch these drivers hammer around the racetrack, got to get into strategy soon because a pit window is about to open. In fact, Josef Newgarden is the first one in, Rick.
Well, it's interesting. In qualifying, he actually said he liked the car. He said he had a good balance on it. He just missed the window. As a result, he did not qualify where he wanted back in the pack. As a result, he's now going to a different strategy. Jan?
Well, the strategy there for Josef Newgarden, as we see some other cars hitting pit road, there's two ways to approach this race. The leaders will take the stop strategy, I think, on the left, 2 stops. They will wait at least until lap 16, maybe lap 20 before they stop. But you see people like Josef Newgarden, other cars hitting pit road, those are those in the middle of the pack that want to take a risk. It puts you on fresh tires, you make one more stop, your overall pace is about the same, but you can run quicker if you're stuck in traffic. Again, leaders won't do that. It's too risky. You give up your spot on track. The midfield runners, I think, will go for it. Newgarden, it paid for a second-place finish last year.
Qualified in 14th spot for this race. So the strategy, both 2017 races were won on 2 stops. Both 2016 races were won on 3 stops. 2015 on 2 stops, 2014 on 3 stops. So it just depends how the day plays out with the caution flags and the rest. Here's Hinchcliffe coming in for his stop, just 8 laps into the race.
We'll come in here, no changes. Nice and easy on your marks.
Yeah, James Hinchcliffe, I think the original plan for the team was to split strategies, with Wickens doing 2 and for Hinchcliffe to do 3. On the way in, they were having a discussion about the car and what changes they wanted to make, and Hinchcliffe's point was, you know what, I don't think we can judge based on that short stint. Alan?
Gabby Chavez, Rick, also in on that lap. Mateus Leist pitted at the same time Josef Newgarden did.
And we talk about James Hinchcliffe. He needed to come in, guys, because he got passed by Spencer Pigot. He was off the pace and going to go slow, so they had to really take a gamble and come in early.
Takuma Sato picking up a spot on Robert Wickens there. Sato up to 4th place in the 30 car.
I think it all just depends on pace. If you can run the reds and you can run them long enough and be on pace, you might even change your strategy.
Well, that's the other thing, looking back at the historical data from the last few years. The trick for everyone has been start on the softer tire, the reds, get rid of that in the first stint, and then run the black tires, the harder tires, later on in the race. So we'll see how that plays in this one. Everybody starting on the red tires except Graham Rahal you're riding with, and you heard him in our pre-race say the object was to ride that speed in this first stint that would hold out longer on those tires and see if he could pick up some track position. Here's Wickens, Rick.
Well, you talk about changing strategies. That's exactly what's going on. You planned to start with maybe a 2 or a 3 stop. The team idea, maybe they were going to split. Instead, both of the Schmidt-Peterson cars have now come in, made their stops, and are back out.
And the simple reason for that is the car is super ugly on the red tires. When I say that, the car no longer has the grips. Yes, they're meant to wear out, but they're wearing out faster than the drivers would wish.
For some cars, but not these 2 guys. Andretti and Dixon are pulling away from the field, and they have their own private little battle going on, and they're not slowing down any.
Other pit stops that happened at the same time we saw the Wickens pit stop. Tony Kanaan and Max Chilton were in. Penalty for James Hinchcliffe. Pit exit violation. There's a line at the pit exit that the transponder of your car must go across. Hinch violated that. He was too far to the left. He has to come back through and has done a drive-through penalty.
And Alan, we've all done that because you're so anxious to get going, especially when you know you've had a slow beginning first segment and you want to make time up, so you try to leave pit lane at a high pace and you go over that white line.
Saw Hunter Ray hang a right onto the pit lane, Jan.
And this is somewhat surprising. He's running in 5th position, so this is about as far back. He's essentially has a car that he feels he can lead with. This is going to take him out of the sequence. They will check their GPS readings, and they'll make sure that he rejoins at 6.9 seconds. They would have looked. Now he should have clear racetrack. If this strategy works, you got to go, 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 not around other cars.
Get him out there with some clear racetrack. Let him pound out some qualifying pace laps, as many as he can. So on the eventual exchange, he's used that clear racetrack to gain time. Back to Detroit after this from your ABC station. The Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Steel from the Raceway at Belle Isle in Detroit. Beautiful day here. We'll do it again tomorrow, same time, same place, 3:30 Eastern here on ABC. Speaking of tomorrow on ABC, the NBA Finals continue tomorrow night. Game 2, Cleveland and Golden State. How about the overtime thriller in Game 1 and all of the conversation afterwards about a variety of topics. Coverage at 7:30 tomorrow with NBA Countdown, also streaming live on the ESPN app. Game 2. NBA Finals. One first-timer in the race today in that blue, white, and pink 19 car. This is Santino Ferrucci, originally from Woodbury, Connecticut. He's been over in Europe racing just 20 years old. He's on the Haas Reserve Driver program, and he's been racing Formula 2 over there when Pietro Fittipaldi got hurt. Ferrucci's people called Dale Coyne and said, hey, we'd like to try an IndyCar race. Our people think that'd be good for them. Ferrucci saying Gunther Steiner, who runs the Haas Formula 1 team, recommended he go give it a shot. And Rick, here he is in his first IndyCar race.
Well, and I love what happened on the radio just a few moments ago. Now remember, these two cars are teammates. They're both part of the Dale Coyne stable. So a moment ago, they came on the radio and they asked Ferrucci, they said, is Seb holding you up? And Ferrucci came back and said, yeah, horribly. Now remember, they're on different strategies, but the point being, Seb has been kind of struggling trying to be able to hang on to that. Now he's taking a look to the inside to the young rookie, and he gets him. There's some veteran strategy pulling it off.
And Charlie Kimball with the pass there on Ferrucci. So Kimball moving up to 23rd place as Bourdais has pulled away from this group just a little bit. Up front, Marco Andretti leading Scott Dixon. They've put just a slight gap on Alexander Rossi, who runs third. Remember, Rossi so strong in the Long Beach race, the winner there back in April. Now, speaking of Bourdais, just a little excursion a minute ago for the St. Pete winner in that 18.
Well, when you say excursion, you can't get away with too many excursions here at Detroit because there's walls just about everywhere. So it's always tough going with that.
The fastest car right now is Rahal. He's doing laps in 1:18 and 1:17. Where everybody else is doing 1 minute and 19 seconds.
That's the end of the straightaway. So into the runoff, spin it around, the flying 180, and back onto the racetrack for Sebastian Bourdais. Did cost him a couple of spots as Kimball and Ferrucci went by him.
And Eddie, when you were mentioning that, the two guys that we're looking at right now, Marco Andretti and Scott Dixon, still in the reds, as we mentioned. And they're going out there, they're turning laps, but as you mentioned, at least about a second, sometimes a second and a half slower than Graham Rahal on those black sidewall tires. Now, the other teams will see how fast.
We can see Rahal. Watch, Scott. He's right behind. You see him coming into view now? That's how much distance he's gained.
The other teams will turn around and watch on their leaderboard and see the times and see how fast Rahal is going, and they'll know that they need to bring their guys in very shortly to put the regular black wall tires on.
But here's the risk that Rahal and company are taking. They still have to put the softer tires on for a stint in this race. And depending on how things play out, they've got to hold their spot. As you see the times that he's using as those red tires fall off for the guys in front of him, he's got to hold his position on track, Jan, when they go to that alternate strategy.
Yes, for Graham Rahal, as we watch the battle for Ryan Hunter-Reay as well. Ryan Hunter-Reay has been very happy with this car. Remember, he's also on a strategy with newer tires out there. You can see how that makes hay. For Graham Rahal, they are so happy that it stayed green for his strategy to work. The only driver starting on the blacks, no cautions early on, is exactly what he wanted.
Yep.
Graham is going to catch up and pass every one of these cars with the next 10 laps.
On board Rahal's car with our steel telemetry.
He's struggled with qualifying lately. Boy, when he has a car in the race that works, he's unstoppable.
So much talent, so smooth, very smart there. You see how he rolled into the turn on turn 3 down the end of the straight, not chasing it too hard, trying to save some fuel at the same time as chasing these guys down. Now watch the speed here, going down out of turn 6 to turn 7, should see about 170 miles an hour. See him off the
fuel
throttle.
saving?
He is, that's what I was just mentioning. I noticed that going into turn 3. Very smart drive.
Now the easiest spot to pass a car is into turn 3, and you have to get through 1 and 2, which is the two hardest corners on the track, with much more acceleration to get him on the straightaway, and it's probably the hardest corner on the track.
13 here, 14 coming up.
Now this is the bit where he's coming up to right now.
Now here's the tricky one. The good run off of here.
Yep. Didn't quite get it. And there's a jump in the middle of it.
He's on the push to pass, the extra horsepower, trying to catch Rossi here.
And Rossi's not the easiest person in the world to pass. So Graham has to keep applying pressure, and sooner or later you find a way around them.
Keep applying pressure while you're trying to hit a fuel number.
We Talk about fuel numbers. They're just really trying to make sure they can run as long as possible on track.
How about the three-way view? Out the back of Rossi's car, the visor cam from Graham, and the aerial to show you where they are on the track. Catching the front two. Fun stuff. 16 of 70 laps completed, working lap 17. Marco Andretti has led them all. Pretty good race at the front of the field. Pretty good racing here. Rossi and Rahal you saw in our ABC side-by-side coverage. You could see more of the same tomorrow, same time, same place. Round 2 of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader, presented by Steel, 3:30 Eastern, ABC, and also streaming live on the ESPN app. So every time Graham Rahal hits that push to pass that gives him that burst of extra horsepower to try and get alongside Alexander Rossi on the run down to turn 3, Rossi sees him coming and hits it as well to even it up and keep that number 3 position, keep Rahal behind him.
If he's going to pass him, he has to get closer in 1 and 2. These 2 corners we're in right now.
But when you saw Rossi get on the push to pass also and defend, and they're doing the same thing probably coming up here. He wants to get by.
Nope, neither one of them want it here.
Where Alexander Rossi wants to make sure that he stays in front because track position is so important, especially coming up for pit stops. You want to see if you can make sure you stay in front of the guy that you're battling with.
And by the way, while we're on board with Rossi, how about those restart moves he made at Indianapolis last Sunday? Bold. Here's Pagenaud in, Rick.
Yeah, Simon Pagenaud, at the very beginning of that stint, he was complaining a little bit, and Kyle Moyer came on the radio to remind him that they had an IMSA sports car race here a little bit earlier today, laid down a lot of rubber. He said the track is going to feel different. So they had to kind of remind him that it's a different feel than they had yesterday when they were racing.
And as this race goes on and they put more of the Firestone rubber down, it'll get back to more what they're tuning for and expecting.
Talk about Firestone rubber. There's a call that possibly we could have some rain tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Firestone has brought a brand new rain tire. Kerr Adams and their group has turned around and designed. Very anxious to see how that works.
The drivers aren't that anxious to see how it works.
But I'm saying that because I'm standing here.
The fans aren't anxious to see how it works. We like that bright blue sky we've got today. How about this Marco Andretti race so far?
What a drive.
Been a long time for Marco since he had won a pole. Got that accomplished.
There goes Rahal.
No, same thing though.
Rossi is impossible to pass. And he's not blocking. He just brakes so late that Rahal just, rightly so, won't take the bait.
Well, and you mentioned also getting through turns 1 and 2 close enough that you can actually make that draft, make that pass going into 3. But don't forget that these new cars have less downforce this year than last year, sometime about 1,000 pounds less. It's difficult to do that.
Since the start of 2016, Marco Andretti led a total of 16 laps in Verizon IndyCar Series competition. He's topped that today already. Is this the day? He sure hopes so. First thing he said after winning the pole position this morning is, I want to win. I want to win. I want to win. That's what it's all about.
His career definitely needs what's happening today. All of his teammates have been successful, and today he's right where he wants to be in front of the whole field. Hasn't put a foot wrong.
Overtake for lap time.
And part of that coaching that you're hearing on the radio, they have been telling Marco, of course, that's Brian Herta who's making the strategy calls for Marco. They've been coaching him, hang in there, you're doing great, hang in there. The reason they say hang in there, he's trying to extend the stint on the red tires, as are the 3 cars behind him, to try and get him into a window where you're not saving fuel. So job well done so far for Andretti.
And that used the overtake for lap time. He was on the push to pass down that straightaway and trying to boost his lap time a little bit in the last few laps in this opening stint for him. Takuma Sato just on and off pit road. Zach Veach is on pit road now for a pit stop as we cycle through here. This what will be very jumbled up race strategy. Some 3 stoppers, some 2 stoppers. Always interesting to see how it all plays out and if a caution comes out and changes the whole complexion of the day.
Hinchcliffe has picked up his pace. He's done some laps in the 16s. He did a 16.9 but he's way back in 15th position right now.
That's a minute 16. And Hunter Ray, by the way, we talked about that, constantly pounding out the minute 17s. Hunter Ray's up to 8th as the cycle goes here, after making the pit stop earlier back on lap number 9.
Got to give Andretti, Dixon, and Rossi credit, because those are all the cars that are on those red sidewall tires, the softer tire that we spoke about. The grip is supposed to fall off as you continuously run these tires. And Rahal on the black sidewall tires, they say that tire goes much longer, but I tell you what, they're all running the same speed right now, which is very impressive.
Trying hard to get by Rossi, but he can brake later than me.
And the reason for that is probably because of the red sidewall tires. There is more grip. You see him pull away just a little bit coming off a turn. Power down's probably a little easier with the red sidewall tires. Maybe braking could be a little bit better.
I'll tell you something else I'm seeing here, Scott and Eddie, is you see the marbles beginning to build up when we get some of those wider camera shots. If you get offline for some reason here, it could get really tricky.
You're into the wall if you're getting offline.
So Andretti, Dixon, Rossi, Rahal, your top 4. They have about 8 seconds on Will Power, who's running in 5th place.
Notice with Rahal on the radio.
There's Rossi to the pits.
Rossi's in. Rahal was just a little bit out of breath driving on this bumpy racetrack.
I don't blame him.
Now we'll see if Rahal can catch Dixon.
Jan?
Alexander Rossi, of course, he heard those radio communications, and he knows he was getting pressure from behind. They told him, stay on the push to pass. We want you to close that gap to Dixon. He wasn't able to do that. He had to defend from behind. A little bit longer stop. That was a 9-second stop for Alexander Rossi under green. It'll get him out, hopefully, in some clear traffic now with these black sidewalls. And we see Andretti is setting up, so it's going to get heated here in a moment.
Got to get it full of fuel before you let him go on the 2-stop strategy. So there's Andretti, Dixon right behind him.
Now for Andretti, when he knows he's pitting, he's going to push extra hard to try to build a bit more of a gap to Dixon behind him. We'll see if Dixon comes in at the same time or if he takes the advantage and tries to stay out an extra lap, if he has enough fuel, and try to just put some stellar laps in so maybe he can even pull away.
Here they come toward the entry of pit road, just another corner away. Andretti looks, and yes, here he comes. Dixon stays out. So Marco Andretti in, Jan.
As I said, job well done for Marco Andretti. They are well aware that with Scott Dixon staying on the track, this has to be an ultra-fast stop, and your in and out laps are so important. He's going for scrubbed sidewall blacks. That's 8.4, Rick.
So Will Power brings the car down. This week he has Roger Penske back in his ear. A little while ago they came on and they said, we're in the window, but let's keep running. And then he was on his ear saying, let's get these laps and make them as fast as we possibly can. He was running faster laps than the leader. Once again, the goal to get all the fuel in, not a short stop, 8.9 seconds, and he's got those brand new black sidewall tires on the car.
Oh, you can tell because they're bright and shiny, but they're also very slippery for the first couple of laps under braking here into 3. So we're watching Scott Dixon. Will he come in this time?
So it's Dixon, Rahal, Ed Jones. Those 3 have not pitted yet. Then Ryan Hunter-Reay cycles up to 4th. And Marco Andretti is behind Hunter-Reay, by the way, on the track.
For you, we're ready for you.
Dixon, the pit road.
In here.
Now Dixon has nobody ahead of him. Let's see what sort of laps he can put with these old blacks.
And they know that there's a window of opportunity for Scott Dixon here because of Marco Andretti's stop was not as fast as it might have been. They know they have an opportunity. Oh yeah, that's 7.1 seconds. And if he did a good in-lap and now an out-lap, he may be able to leapfrog.
Less time sitting still. Yep. I talk about it, right? He's out there running second, but he's managing the fuel a little better than the race leader.
But he's got to get on it on these first 2 corners.
Well, I think he's well ahead of him, guys, by my calculations.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yep. There. That's the difference of 2 seconds in the pits.
So Marco's going to be in the radio now and go, what happened there?
So Graham Rahal is the leader, still not having pitted.
and the fastest car on the track with a 16.5.
We heard Rahal saving some fuel earlier. Now he's got that clear racetrack ahead of him, trying to hammer on it. Newgarden looking around, Andretti.
Yeah, Andretti, a little bit of a defensive line, a different line that you would generally take coming into there.
Graham Rahal's on the pit lane. Jan?
And they're going to take this opportunity. This is the one stint that Graham Rahal will not enjoy too much. These are brand new sticker reds, and he has to hope that he gets some clear track. This will be the shortest stint that he has. It seemed like it took just a moment for the fuel to release. That's 8.6 seconds. So a healthy stop, but not as quick as we've seen.
So remember, just joining us, Graham Rahal was the only driver that did not start the race on the red, softer tires. So you have to run both compounds at least once during the race. He's got them on now, and we'll have to see how he fares with the other drivers now having gotten rid of that softer sidewall tire requirement. Softer compound requirement, excuse me. Pit crew's been busy. Hunter Ray is out in front on the racetrack. There is your leader. In the Detroit Grand Prix race number 1, Ryan Hunter-Reay is out in front. He's got 7.9 seconds on Scott Dixon. You see Hunter-Reay pitted at lap 9 on a 3-stop strategy. Dixon, Rahal, Andretti on a 2-stop strategy. Then Wickens stopping early for a 3-stopper. Really fascinating. Throw Graham Rahal on the alternate tire strategy in there, and it's really fascinating. But how about Scott Dixon's crew? Basically leapfrogging over Marco Andretti's with the stop, the in-lap, the out-lap, the whole thing. And now Dixon, the leader of the group, who's pitted for one of only 2 times in the race.
And to add to Hunter-Reay, he just turned the fastest lap of the race with a 16.26. 1 minute 16.26.
So there's Graham Rahal. Now the only driver on the racetrack on the softer red sidewall tires. The gap back to Marco Andretti. That's Rene Binder, the lap car. Then Marco running in 4th.
The reds are way better. Copy that. These are just going to come in a little slower. Keep working.
That's what you're going to get.
If that's true, Rahal now has an advantage. So maybe the cars just react differently to different tires.
Well, you know, it is, like I said, 25 degrees cooler today, and there's some battling going on right now. So that
Watch Rossi, go on the outside. Watch Rossi.
Nice crossover.
That was perfect.
And he didn't leave Wickens a whole lot of room, did he?
More than enough. Nobody touched.
5th place there. So Wickens back to 6th. That's Tony Kanaan all over him. A look from Wickens' car. And a reminder to download IndyCar Mobile for exclusive live in-car cameras, hear driver and pit crew chatter, and more.
This lap, pit this lap. There is still clear track in the next few laps to drop you into. So pit and let's get some freshmen.
That is Wickens' team calling him in. So the second of his 3 stops in the race about to happen. Alexander Rossi, so good, so on his game, huh?
So he kind of put the bait out there for Wickens, and then he just went right under, and now he knows he's in the right position for the next corner, and there's nothing Wickens could do. Nothing at all.
Rossi, the winner at Long Beach, the phenomenal 32nd place start up to up front finish last weekend at Indianapolis. Jan?
And Tony Kanaan is taking this opportunity in that battle with Wickens to go ahead and take that stop. They're going with fresh blacks. Oh, that's a little bit of delay, Rick.
Yeah, Robert Wickens has brought the car in just a moment ago. You heard him talk about the fact with the team that they wanted to give him some clear track as they were coming in. His strategist, Pierce Phillips, said, look, I know you're hurting, but this is the best we can do for you right now.
Rossi is all over his teammate Marco Andretti. This should be interesting to see because neither of them want to give up position.
Marco just a little burst of push to pass when he started that straightaway to keep Rossi behind him. Shut it off fairly quickly. Remember, the drivers get up to 150 seconds of that extra horsepower. It's up to them to manage it. They got to turn it on and turn it back off.
You want to have some of that left for those last 3 or 4 laps if somebody's on your gearbox. Rossi's had an incredible season so far, Scott.
Very talented. Remember when he came over here, there was everybody wondering whether he's came from Formula One, whether he would stay or whether he would go back. But after winning the Indianapolis 500, and I think he honestly, in speaking to him, loves racing Indy cars. We talked about earlier about different type of tracks you get to run. I think that's what he loves.
He loves being competitive. The car he was in Formula One was not a competitive car, but here, he's quite amazing.
He has been on his game. 4th place finish, those bold moves on the restarts at Indy last weekend. Here's a little bit back in the pack. We just saw Tony Kanaan on and off of pit road. He's fallen into the middle of this group. Zach Veach, you're riding on board with in 12th position. Robert Wickens just ahead of him in 11th, and Kanaan behind him in 13th.
Zach Veach, what a great job he's been doing for Andretti. The driver that came along, went through all that Mazda Road to Indy programming, won races, and now he has a shot at a 3-year contract to go and get understanding about IndyCar racing, learn from his teammates, and you get to be coached by a guy like Michael Andretti.
And above all, he's avoiding accidents. He's finishing a lot of races, and that's the only way you can learn is by finishing races.
Ryan Hunter-Reay's the race leader. He's got 8.3 seconds on Scott Dixon. It's tight from there. Dixon, Rahal, Andretti, Rossi make up the rest of the top 5. This is Brendan Cleve just changing the tires on Robert Wickens' car. We're back to Detroit after this from your ABC station. The Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel, approaching its midway point here at the Raceway at Belle Isle Park. And an interesting exchange a minute ago when we went to the break for our local ABC stations. Remember that Ryan Hunter-Reay was the leader. He pitted early, making an early commitment to a 3-stop strategy. Well, he made his second stop and had a 22-second gap to try and cover. It's 22 seconds on pit road. He made that stop, and that's Marco Andretti and Alexander Rossi right behind him. He had to fight to keep them behind him while his tires were cold and coming up to temperature, and he did it.
And a very smart move because he ran a bit of a defensive line going down the straight into turn 3. He wanted Marco to go around the high side. He didn't leave him the inside. So watch here. Off the turn, putting power down. As you mentioned, tires are cold. Stays to the right-hand side of the track. Makes Marco look to the left, which is a long way around. Smart move by Ryan Hunter-Reay. Remember, those are teammates.
But Marco knew he had to get him in that corner or the next, because once his tires, as we can see, got warmer, he's going to disappear into the distance.
So remember earlier when Hunter-Reay pitted at lap 9, they found an empty spot on the racetrack for him, and he was pounding out those 116, 117, 116 laps while the front runners were running 118s. And here's how it turns out. He's in 3rd place, but he's 18 seconds behind this man, the leader, Scott Dixon,
who's doing 16.1s. Now he's the fastest car in the track.
Dixon leading Graham Rahal by 6.9 seconds. Rahal not even in the picture. There's Rahal all the way back up the straightaway. So Graham Rahal running 2nd. Remember, the only driver to start the race on the primary tires, now trying to slug it out on the alternates and see where he can end up when it's time to make his final pit stop. There's Hunter-Reay in 3rd. Has pulled away from Andretti and Rossi in 4th and 5th. Solid day for Ed Jones, who runs 6th, followed by Sato, Power back in 8th, then Newgarden and Spencer Piggott round out the top 10.
The top 7 cars are all Honda.
Well, that was kind of the inverse of the story that we talked about at Indianapolis last week, when the Chevrolets seemed to have much of the muscle of the month, and today here in the Motor City, it's the Hondas who seem to have the advantage.
Yes, it is. We see 2 teammates here, of course. Alexander Rossi behind Marco Andretti. The radio communications for Rossi had been, I think that Marco is holding me up. Of course, that happens with teammates, but you can see visually that may be the case. The team has decided, okay, we're going to try and leapfrog him at the next pit stop. Obviously, when you had for a moment there, 3-4 Andretti cars together at one time, you got to have to manage the strategy. Right now, they're saying, okay, next pit stop, we're going to get him.
You think Rossi forgot the team is called Andretti?
That next pit stop is a bit away, so he's going to have to keep on plugging in behind Marco's car for now if they're going to have to look for that next pit stop to try and leapfrog.
And the other opportunity as the driver that you're looking for is that if you come up to traffic, then he'll start to push a little harder, maybe use the push to pass to get a little closer to Marco to be able to take advantage in track if they run up to Indy.
Newgarden in the 1. Rene Binder in the 32, back for another go. He's a lap down, so Newgarden overtaking him not for position, but Josef back in 15th place. Remember, they called him in for his second stop a little on the early side. Tim Cindric looking to find an empty spot on the racetrack for Newgarden to try and crank out some lap times. So Newgarden running in 9th position now. He's about 4 seconds behind Will Power. Zach Veach 26, Tony Kanaan 14, Charlie Kimball 23. That's for 12th, 13th, and 14th. Just past halfway in race number 1 of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader. Scott Dixon out in front, Charlie Kimball through, Tony Kanaan there. Riding with the Indianapolis 500 winner, Will Power back in 8th position. And a reminder to download IndyCar Mobile to access exclusive live in-car cameras, hear driver and pit crew chatter and more, only on Verizon. Power, the highest running Chevrolet-powered entry at this point, and Will kind of suffering the same fate that a lot of other Indianapolis 500 winners have suffered in the race following their victory. Dario Franchitti finishing second here in 2012. Other than that, for the 500 winner, the next race has been a little bit of a challenge.
I guess if I was an engine engineer and I had to decide against winning the Indianapolis 500, and I know we're at Detroit right now, or Detroit, I think the Indy 500 lasts a little bit longer.
You'd vote for that one, huh?
I would vote for that Power just at the end of the straightaway.
But you're in the hometown of Chevrolet and Roger Penske. This is his event, hometown race, so yeah, they want to win it.
Penske wants to win everything, every place, every race, but sometimes that's not possible. There are trade-offs, as we can see. But what an impressive turnout for Honda today.
Tony Kanaan on Zach Veach. That's back for 13th place, so Kanaan up through.
That's the experience to a rookie right there.
So while this is going on back in the pack, Scott Dixon up front. You see top of your screen, we're working the 40th lap. On his 36th lap, set the fast lap of the race, pounding out a 1 minute 15.8 second lap. On the 38th lap, Ryan Hunter-Reay, remember he the lead of the 3-stop strategy cars, pounded out the second fastest lap of the race. And on that same lap, Marco Andretti pounded out the 3rd fastest lap of the race so far. How about Dixon? How impressive has this performance been? Not only what he does on the track, but what he does on the track, allowing the pit crew to do what they do strategically. He's so good at executing the plan they design, and Jan, because he's so good at it, they're allowed to push those designs a little further.
Yes, they are. And you talk about those lap times for Scott Dixon. What they're doing right now, they're trying to get as much of a gap as they can to give them some strategy options. We're only a few laps away. You can hear some of the air guns going down here on pit lane. If they decide that they catch some traffic, you can see there are a few cars ahead of Dixon. If he gets a big enough gap, my theory has always been you want to be the first car to make your last stop. So if you have enough of a gap, that's what they're working on. I think could be within 5 laps potentially for Scott Dixon.
Well, like we saw for Dixon and for Sebastian Bourdais in the Long Beach race, the last thing you want to have happen is to still be on the racetrack and have a caution come out, have some other people having made their pit stops, and have that pit road be closed on you.
Yeah, then you're at the back of the queue, as we always say. But for Dixon right now, I think about how physically fit all these guys are. You mentioned pounding out the laps, and these guys are being pounded in the race car. And for guys like Scott Dixon and so many other people that work for the Pit Fit facility in Indianapolis, these guys know they have to be absolutely top-notch, top-fit. It's impressive how the drivers today are so fit compared to maybe our era, Eddie.
I was fit. You might not have been
looking at
fit.
you, yeah.
You trying to say you didn't eat as much Parmesan? Graham Rahal, remember, on the opposite tire strategy of everyone, so here he is in second place, but his lap times are about a second slower per circuit than Ryan Hunter-Reay, who's eating him up right now, trying to take that second spot away. Rahal on the push to pass to try and defend.
And when there's that much differential between the two, sooner or later they're going to find a way around you. Rahal is not, I don't think he's enjoying these reds as much as he did his first set of black tires.
But if he survives the stint still in second place, then what they need is a caution to somehow catch up to Dixon.
So that was a butt with some hope.
Yeah, well, you know, Hope isn't a great strategy, I understand.
Right now, Dixon has got everybody by the throat.
But we heard Graham tell us before the race, you know, starting back in 8th place, they needed to do something different than everyone else to try it.
Oh, it's a phenomenal drive, and he's in 2nd place, like you said. But right now, I believe Dixon has an advantage.
Simon Pagenaud, the first to make a move to the pit lane here. This with 29 laps to go. That's a little on the early side. The last couple of years, the winner has made his final pit stop on laps 48 and 47, respectively, last year. The last couple of races, I should say. So we'll figure to see something pretty close to that for all of these cars in another 5 to 6 laps. Caution free so far.
And we should note, I think I'm correct on this, that nobody has passed Andretti yet when on the track. The only time that he fell behind is with that pit stop where they dropped back.
Great aerial view. You can see Ryan Hunter-Reay making time up under braking.
And you'll be able to keep watching this as we take a break. Final pit stops coming up. Will the lead change hands there? What a great fight for 2nd place, and more coming tomorrow. The second end of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader presented by Steel. Sunday 3:30 Eastern on ABC, also streaming live on the ESPN app. Renee Binder is in the Turn 7 runoff, local yellow, at this part of the racetrack where Ray Hall and Hunter-Reay are coming to. There's the 32 car. The Austrian has it running. He's trying to find a way to get spun around and get out of purgatory and rejoin the race.
Very difficult sometimes to get these cars into reverse.
Didn't even come close to making
that. That was...
Here's Dixon in, Jan.
Yes, they took the opportunity. They knew that Renee Binder was in that escape road, and so they took this opportunity, as is Graham Rahal. He'll arrive here just in a moment. Anytime you see a car you think there could potentially be a full course caution, you do not want to be caught by it. So Scott Dixon has made a stop now. Graham Rahal waiting for all the fuel. That's taking a long time. That's over 10 seconds for Graham Rahal.
I think Dixon's was 6.9.
Lots of people coming onto the pit lane. There's Rossi. Sato's also been in. Power's been in. Andretti just in front of Dixon on the racetrack. Robert Wickens is on pit road. Binder's car still sitting in the runoff, but the engine is still running on the car. So just a local yellow at that part of the racetrack.
Now, if they turn around and have to put some of the safety workers out to retrieve him, then they will go full course yellow. There's the truck moving.
There we go.
Okay, the car has stalled now, but this is just a local yellow. They're going to look to just pull Binder's car back into that runoff. And so we stay under the green flag for most of the course. Hinchcliffe, Beach,
Marco, pit.
also on and off the pit lane. You hear Andretti being called in right there. And Hunter-Reay also in.
Yes, now he no longer is going to be on a different sequence. Even though this is his 3rd stop, he now is going to be stopping about the same time. Again, he knows he has the pace. We also see Marco Andretti taking opportunity at the very same time. He's got some sticker blacks to go here, waiting for all the fuel because it is a long stint. Again, irrespective by how you started this race, now you know it's the time to stop because you want to get to the end before a caution. And here
look
it is.
At that. Graham Rahal has hit the wall.
I'm sorry, boys. I have absolutely no clue what happened. Snapped so huge on the entry, and I have no clue.
That's a huge hit, boys.
Wow.
He is up against the wall between turns 13 and 14.
High-speed section. He's out of the turn. Over the bumps. Oh, the tire caved on the left rear. Did you see that? That was very interesting.
Did getting that right front so far up on the curbing just kick the car like that?
Yeah, I think his right front tire. Oh, he clipped the curb on the inside. Wow.
I crashed, boys, hard.
That was a hard hit.
So first yellow of the race. You've obviously heard from Graham and giving the thumbs up there to the safety team. Wow. What a terrific drive, what a terrific effort, but one little slip on this unforgiving course, and you've crashed hard, and you're out of the race. So Scott Dixon behind the pace car as the leader of this race, but now the field gets to close up behind him after Graham Rahal finds the wall. We're back after a message and a word from your ABC station. Under caution at Detroit, time for our Honda race rundown and what's happened so far. Marco Andretti started on pole in this race. He's done a lot of leading, led the most laps, but Scott Dixon has led the second most laps. And an exchange of pit stops here in the first round for the two stoppers vaulted Dixon into the lead.
And their pit crew is always so super fast in that PNC Bank machine. Graham Rahal, not so lucky.
Having a great run, though. He was in second place.
But the Hondas have dominated the day. Top running Chevrolet back in 7th place. And for Graham Rahal, that fine run just ended in a very difficult way.
Looks like he got just a little bit of that curb on the inside and just made that car go directly in the wall. Watch.
Right here. There is no room for error on this track.
You know, and I'm not so sure that something didn't happen on the left rear to sort of make that car turn a little bit to clip that curb, so they'll get back in the garage area and have a look at that.
But of course, this being a doubleheader weekend, now the Rahal team needs to either repair that car, or if it's unrepairable, if they damage the tub somehow, prepare another car to do it all again. Qualify and race tomorrow with no practice.
What a pity, though. He was having quite a run. But the crews are phenomenal. The things that they do with these race cars is quite incredible.
So let's see who comes into pit here. I expect it'll be all the guys who had not pitted by the time the caution came out. First of those should be Charlie Kimball back in 7th place. You should have Kanaan, Laced, Chilton, Jordan King, Gabby Chavez. And by the way, Renee Binder's car was refired out of the Turn 7 runoff by the safety team, and he has rejoined the event. So pit road open, and Kimball and Kanaan, yes, will be the first to make their stops. Rick?
Charlie Kimball currently the highest running Chevrolet, but that is mainly because he was the furthest forward of the guys who had not pitted yet. There, in fact, you can see another one of the teams laying out, because right now these are all the guys who did not lay out, with the exception of that car, Simon Pagenaud. Simon Pagenaud was going to have to do a long stint. Instead, they're going to come in, give him some fuel, and let him go out and race.
And you see Tony Kanaan rejoining the fray, of course. Those who tried to stay out and play the gamble the other way, it's just not working. That comment we talked about that's known in this kind of racing, that the first person to make their last stop protects you against a yellow. All those that had to just pit, they lose their track position, as you can see, but they were out there gambling, hoping, but it just didn't go their way.
Yeah, Pagenaud was hoping for the caution to come out and close the pit road before Dixon and the others got a chance to stop, and maybe they could have stolen a little free track position. We'll be right back. Still under the first and thus far only caution of the Detroit Grand Prix, presented by Steel, the raceway at Belle Isle Park, just adjacent to downtown Detroit. There's some big iron moving by. Speaking of iron, nobody wants to hit the iron in an NBA Finals game. ABC tomorrow, Game 2, Cleveland and Golden State. Warriors up 1-0 after the overtime win on Thursday, despite the Kings' 51 points. We start at 7:30 with NBA Countdown tomorrow night, and it also streams live on the ESPN app. So racing from Detroit, and then NBA Finals Game 2 tomorrow here on ABC. And an exciting finish coming up to this one, with Scott Dixon having Ryan Hunter-Reay on his gearbox, Marco Andretti, Alexander Rossi, and Ed Jones. The rest of the top 5 all waiting for the sweeping of some of the marbles and green flag to try and finish this race. Now, before the caution flag, this from Alexander Rossi.
Crazy how much I'm being held up. This is one of the most frustrating experiences. Yeah, I hear you. We'll talk about it afterwards, but I hear you.
I think Andretti can expect a very rambunctious Rossi on this restart.
You think?
Yep, my money's on that.
Yeah, I think so too.
And how about what Rossi did at the end of the Indy 500? Wasn't that unbelievable? I've never seen somebody get away with as much stuff as he did. And just watch what he does here.
And that's really what it was about last Sunday, right?
Crazy. I mean, it's just insane the things he got away with.
Being aggressive.
Now, this is the best. This is the best one. All on the outside. If he touches a tire doing this, he's going to end up knocking. Look at that. That wasn't even half an inch. And he does it again.
Boy, he was the show, for sure.
He does not lack anything to win championships in IndyCar.
Well, the sweepers are out right now.
He is the sweeper.
Taking off the marbles coming down to turn 3 where the restart's going to happen. So we'll be sure to pay attention to that, because as we can see as we ride along here with Rossi, there is no hesitation.
He got lucky because the other car spotter said, car high, car high, car high.
No, I think he said, get out of the way.
Well, what a tremendous run from 32nd to 4th. And you mentioned Rossi and nothing holding him back from winning the championship. His season so far this year, phenomenal. 11th, his only finish outside of the top 5. Restart coming up in a minute. Green flag, Scott Dixon leads him away. 17 laps to go in the race. Sato with an inside move on Jones. Up to 5th place is Takuma. Willpower to the inside of Ed Jones. Sato looks on Rossi. Everybody back in line.
Whew, and we made it past the first 3 corners.
I really thought there'd be a lot more action going into 3 and almost some wheel banging, but people just have a hard time getting close to the car in front, and I think it's a result of maybe just a little less downforce these new cars have.
The top 5 cars are Ganassi and Andretti cars, and they are going at it.
Dixon just wheeling that car so precise. A little later apex there than Ryan Hunter-Reay. Got a good drive off the turn.
He's going to need some distance, though, because he can get attacked very easily from there. And Andretti is all over Hunter-Reay. We're going to see who has the best car in 1 and 2, because that makes all the difference if you're going to pass down that back straight.
Dixon, a little push to pass hit here. Did it coming to that turns 1 and 2 to try and get a little gap on Hunter-Reay. They're both on it now. And 5th place again. Sato defends.
See the back end swinging, just putting that power down, spinning the tires.
These cars are so unstable when the tires are not up to temperature.
So while Sato and Ed Jones keep swapping 5th and 6th back and forth in these first 2 laps of racing, these front 4 have gotten away.
Yeah, they're having their own little private party here.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you don't end up getting a driver like Scott Dixon at the very beginning after a restart, he just settles into a pace and just starts to inch away on you. Ryan Hunter, where he knew that. Looks like Dixon's got the better power down. You see that? We talk about Chevrolet and Honda. Honda seems to have better drivability here than the Chevrolet power cars. That means putting your foot on the throttle, getting out of the turn.
All these cars have Hondas right now, so it's a straight fight. It's all going to depend on the driver and the setup.
Well, here's another thing that Dixon has in his toolbox that the guys behind him don't. He has twice as much push to pass left as do Hunter-Reay and Andretti. Just used a little burst of it there off of turn number 2 to try and make sure he kept his gap on Hunter-Reay.
But he's not putting any distance between himself and Hunter-Reay. Hunter-Reay is right in striking distance.
Tony Kanaan inside of Ferrucci. That's Spencer Piggott, 21, being pressured by Hinchcliffe in the 5.
Hinchcliffe running in 11th place. Look at this traffic jam.
On board with Zach Veach, he's looking forward. I thought Hinch might have a shot at Piggott that time, but Piggott...
Oh, trouble! Ferrucci! Oh, a big crash!
And that's why they put tires at the end of straightaways.
Man.
Guys, we're done, we're done.
caution with 15 laps to go. Santino Ferrucci in his first Verizon IndyCar Series race. And boy, got sent for a scary ride at a fast part of the racetrack.
Great job at prepping the race circuit. Look at that. Well, welcome to IndyCar.
We don't know if he had contact with somebody or
he
exactly what
definitely
happened
did.
there, so we'll find out here shortly.
Yes, I'm sure he's feeling that one. But glad to see he's climbing up out of the car.
The tires absorbed a lot of that impact.
So here's Ferrucci coming down toward turn number 7, and that is Charlie Kimball behind him.
Kimball just spun him.
Yep, got into his rear tire, lifted the back end light, and this was so lucky that Zach Veach did not get taken out as Ferrucci was going up and over the curb.
Look what an amazing job those tires did.
Yeah.
That's still a tremendous impact, though.
That's 170 miles an hour, guys. That is a ride.
So did Ferrucci slow down quicker than Kimball was expecting, or was Kimball just trying to get and make it out, try to outbrake him on the outside?
Well, Ferrucci was in the middle, sort of defending his line. Maybe his car was just so bad.
That's no excuse to hit somebody. Wow.
Well, I'm not saying he hit him, just his timing was off, and probably Kimball probably expected him to go a little deeper into the turn.
Well, there's the result, and yeah, despite the barrier doing its job, that's still a pretty heavy hit for Santino Ferrucci. Glad to see he climbed from that car. Full course yellow out. What are we going to see next? After this message and a word from your ABC station. Still to run the final 13 laps of race number 1. Tomorrow, race number 2 of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader presented by Steel. We're here on ABC at 3:30 Eastern Time. It's also streaming live on the ESPN app. Before we get to that one, we have to figure out who's going to win today. Scott Dixon leads it. Jan?
Yes, and of course, Mike Hull is on the radio doing strategy for Scott Dixon. Looks like you're in the catbird seat right now, but I imagine a bit anxious moments when you saw that Binder was in that escape route.
Well, you have anxious moments till the last lap, let's face it. It doesn't matter what's going on in IndyCar racing, but we've run a great race today. Scott's done his part. Our guys in the pits have done theirs, and, we'll head to PNC Bank on Monday.
Now, push-to-pass wise, you have a nice gap. You have plenty to work with. It looks like Scott can pull away, but Ryan Hunter-Reay apparently, it looks like on restarts, he's in there. He's being aggressive. How can you coach Scott, although he looks like he has it handled?
Well, I don't think you can coach Scott. He does it himself. He does a great job. We just let him know. We're an information system going on here, and we let Scott know what's going on.
He's being aggressive. How can you coach Scott, although he looks like he has it handled?
Well, I don't think you can coach Scott. He does it himself. He does a great job. We just let him know. We're an information system going on here, and we let Scott know what's going on with the race. He really understands the people around him. You have to give a lot of credit to the Honda cars behind us because they're getting after it today, and we're happy about that. We got a great race today here and one again tomorrow, so these two races are the same points in total as what we got last weekend, so we got to snap to attention here.
All right, thank you, Mike. He talks about an information system. Well, it's also a lot of experience down here at Ganassi Racing. Alan?
Jan, thanks. You see the AMR safety team making some repairs to that barrier that helped Santino Ferrucci climb away from the crash. Just another safety-related item wanted to pass on to you. Many who follow IndyCar racing are aware of the passing of Dr. Henry Bach, the longtime Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar Director of Medical Services, who passed away at the age of 81. Our Dr. Jerry Punch, who visited with Dr. Bach just last week before the Indy 500, I asked him for a thought, and he said that drivers everywhere consider Dr. Bach a familiar and trusted friend. He was tireless in his efforts to save lives, and he established the standard of care that's employed today around this IndyCar series that's so highly thought of and so well respected. So Dr. Henry Bach passing away, and thoughts with his family. He was 81 years old and such a vital part of this series for so many years.
We talk about the safety of the IndyCar series, and Eddie, you've been, like I have, racing IndyCars around the world. Doesn't matter if it's Brazil or Australia. The neat thing about the IndyCar series is that the doctors that we have at all the events here in North America travel with you around the world. So you have an accident or the safety crew comes up to you at a turn, it's guys that you know because you're with them week in, week out.
And they have so much experience. That makes such a big difference in those critical moments like the one that Hinchcliffe was living through. That sometimes can make the difference between death and life.
So speaking of a critical moment in the outcome of a race, here we come to another restart. This one will be with 10 laps to go in the race. Scott Dixon zooming to catch up with the pace car driven by Oriol Servia, who's beginning to accelerate away from the field. Ryan Hunter-Reay trying to get up with Dixon and see if he can do something with him on this restart to alter the outcome of the finish. Lights out. Coming to the green flag.
Years of experience right now with those first few drivers.
If anybody can bring the fight to Dixon, it's Hunter-Reay.
Here they go. 10 laps to go in the race. Green flag back out in Detroit.
Dixon timed that perfectly.
Got to get away from him this first lap.
Andretti with the defensive
Rossi on the
line.
outside. If he could hold,
Oh!
yes, no. I don't think he's made it. I think Marco's got. That's it. He does. Rossi's in third. Boy, that was close.
And you're trying to be nice because it's your teammate, but maybe not so nice.
That didn't look so nice to me. The teammate thing went out the window there.
Looks like Marco's having difficulty putting the power down. You can see the back end stepping out every once in a while. So crucial, as we mentioned here, braking zones and power down.
And he has Sato behind him, who's notoriously aggressive the last 10 laps of every race.
Charlie Kimball will be assessed a penalty for avoidable contact for the incident with Ferrucci.
Rightly so.
But he has done a good job today. He moved up from starting in the back and had marched himself forward. Charlie did a great job today. Unfortunately, a little error there under braking.
So he will pit from the 14th position for a pass-through penalty. So there it is, the gap. Dixon to Hunter-Reay.
Look at the gap that Dixon has put on Hunter-Reay. Just enough to give him some breathing room.
Yeah, 0.3 of a second faster that lap. But Ryan's not going away.
No, he's like a bulldog.
And for Dixon, when you're leading, you just have to make sure you hit all your turn-in points, your apex. Get on the throttle, don't let the back end step out.
Both of these guys are exceptional talents, and they have very, very hard heads. So now it's just a question of who has more willpower.
Willpower's back in 7th.
I was going to add that.
I stole his name for a minute.
There you go. Key moment of the race, if you weren't with us earlier, green flag pit stops at lap 23 and 24. Marco Andretti led the opening segment of the race. He pitted at lap 23 from the lead. Dixon came in a lap later at 24, made a pit stop that was 2 seconds shorter, came out with the advantage. But after that, it was the strategy. Hunter-Reay on a 3-stop strategy, Dixon on a 2 that swung and got Hunter-Reay up into the 2nd spot.
But how about the synergy between Dixon and his team? It's just impeccable. It's like a Swiss watch. They have a plan, they stick to it, everybody execute perfectly, and that's the end result.
So this race from Newgarden on back. Newgarden in the 1 in 9th place. Spencer Pigot in 10th, Hinchcliffe in 11th, Veach in 12th.
And you know what I always think about when I see guys battling in this position here, Eddie, because you and I have always done it. You are working hard, sometimes harder in the middle of a pack just to be in 10th or 12th or something like that than the guys are at the front.
But the minute you don't worry about that is the minute you should hang up your helmet and go home. You have, as long as there are cars in front of you, you have to attack them.
Watching the left-hand side with James Hinchcliffe, how the steering wheel is putting the shock through the driver's wrist and their forearms, bouncing around in there.
They have to do all this again tomorrow.
Exactly.
8 laps to go.
Coming up to some of the bumpiest section of the racetrack. When you get through this fountain area here, turning out of 11, just this section here, And then 12 and 13, for me, it used to just pound the base of my spine.
And this is where Rahal crashed, right up here, right there in that inside curve.
So there is first to second, Scott Dixon to Ryan Hunter-Reay. Pretty good gap, 2 seconds back to Alexander Rossi in third. Scott Dixon, 37 years old, in his 17th season with Chip Ganassi Racing. Talked about how the transition over to this newer car was a little more difficult for them at the beginning of the season. I mean, look, Dixon finished 6th, 4th, 11th, and 6th in the first 4 races of the year. For a lot of people, that would be great.
Yeah.
For them, that was a little bit below the standard they'd set for themselves over the long course of their pairing together.
And don't forget, they had a revamp over the wintertime. They've gone from a 4-car team down to a 2-car team, brought on Ed Jones, who really just had a tremendous year last year, and brought along a guy that I think is going to be a superstar in Ed Jones because he's young, smart driver, but you get to learn off a guy like Scott Dixon and Mike Hall and everybody that's over there at the race team. And you have an owner like Chip Ganassi who will put anything he needs to behind the team to go ahead and win.
I love Chip. Chip always jumps on there on the social media with his little hashtag, I like winners. Well, he really likes Scott Dixon because he is a winner. Won an Indianapolis 500, won 4 championships, 41 victories in the IndyCar Series, working on 42 here. And you think about the last few weeks for this team. They came out in the Grand Prix race at Indianapolis on the road course and posted a runner-up finish, and that was what kick-started their season. I mentioned earlier his comments about they kind of had to get away from some of the ways of thinking about the car that had worked for them for so long and so well. And they finished runner-up in that event, then had that great drive at Indianapolis last week where they made the fuel strategy work to come up with a 3rd-place finish. He's 4th in the championship, only 25 points off the leader, Will Power. He's going to gain a chunk of that here today by finishing with the win when Power's back in 7th place. And I think Jan's the one that said it earlier, how, Scott Dixon's 4th in the championship and had a subpar start to the season.
Yeah. That's the key right there. And this is definitely not a subpar performance.
Slow starts aren't anything new for that team. That was kind of a theme for a few years, but they've got it rolling now, and he's got to survive these last 5 laps with that gap over Ryan Hunter-Reay. Now, we saw from Graham Rahal how unforgiving this course can be. You cannot put a wheel wrong and get away with it here at Detroit at Belle Isle. But Dixon rarely puts a wheel wrong.
Exactly, and we've talked about how physical this racetrack is, but at this point in the race, this is where it becomes really just a mental exercise in the point that hitting your turn-in points, hitting the apexes, making sure the power is down. I mentioned that before. You have to be precise, but you are so tired right now. Your body is sore and sweat's dripping down into your eyes. This is the toughest part of the race, but for guys like Scott Dixon and Ryan Hunter-Reay, they've been here before. They understand how crucial it is to make sure you focus.
Both of these 2 drivers are in a class of their own. They know exactly what they're doing. And I just think that Dixon has a little bit more car than Hunter-Reay does right now. It's a very small difference, but he manages to gain those 25 yards every lap. If you think about it, over a whole lap, 25 yards is nothing. It's just a little bit here, a little bit under braking, a little bit under acceleration. And they're just outrunning the rest of the field. Rossi cannot get close enough to make any difference, so it really is a battle between these 2 great race car drivers. And I've always said that Dixon is probably the best, if not one of the best race car drivers ever to come out of New Zealand. And there have been some great race car drivers come out of New Zealand in Formula One, many.
Hunter-Reay is going to finish 2nd if nothing changes for a 2nd time this season. Here's a guy so hungry for a win. Long dry spell for Ryan Hunter-Reay. Last win 2015 back at Pocono. Close will be pleasing but not satisfying to him.
I think he was very frustrated when Rossi, his teammate, won in Long Beach, and you can tell by his performance here this weekend he is doing everything he possibly can to get a win. Unfortunately, he's got somebody called Scott Dixon in front of him that's going to make it almost impossible. with just 3 laps to go.
Such a great American driver. You know what I loved in the month of May, we talked about the Indy Grand Prix, is that they had the drivers meeting there, and Ryan Hunter-Reay brought along his son Ryden to the drivers meeting just so he could sit in there and look at it, and pretty cool to see.
He's getting him ready.
Yeah, I've even seen his young son with a race suit on every once in a while, and Ryan said, you know, I think he wants to go karting. He says, I know it's about ready to get expensive.
Yeah, you've lived through that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Alexander Rossi running in 3rd position, another strong drive for him. Marco Andretti, the pole sitter, will end up leading the 2nd most laps in the race. He's running 9 seconds back and forth. Takuma Sato, we mentioned him a couple of times today, but a solid drive in 5th place for Takuma, who started the race in 7th.
And had Rahal not had that problem, he would have been right up with this group.
Yeah, he was in front of a couple of them. So a tough day for Graham Rahal. Again, crashed out of the race.
I think Marco's got his hands full right now with Sato.
After Sato, it's Ed Jones, a couple of seconds back, and then Will Power, the highest running Chevrolet powered driver, the Indy 500 winner, back in 7th place. There is Will.
We mentioned Will driving for Roger Penske, who brought this race back to Belle Isle after it was away for quite a few years. Roger's done so much here for the city of Detroit, obviously the Super Bowl that we know and talk about often, but when you think about Belle Isle, they had another function here last night. They raised funds for bringing the Belle Isle back to the way it used to be. Every year they raise about $1 million that goes back into the refurbish of the whole island here. It's pretty cool.
So there's the leader, inside of 2 laps to go. We'll watch Scott Dixon now to see if he's able to continue his tidy lines and keep that gap on Ryan Hunter-Reay and score what would be his 42nd career win. It's going to be a pretty big milestone. 42 doesn't sound like a milestone, but it is. It will move him into a tie for 3rd place on the all-time wins list with Michael Andretti, who did a lot of winning behind the wheel.
He's done a lot of winning behind the wheel and as a team owner.
Yes.
To be successful in both is very, very rare.
You know how difficult it is to win, right? It's going to be now a consecutive wins streak, his consecutive seasons with a win of 14 for Scott Dixon in 1 more lap. White flag will be waiting for him at the start-finish line.
1 to go.
And we're in the final lap here at Belle Isle. Now 12 corners to go, gapping Hunter-Reay just a little bit more.
See him peeking in the mirrors, just going along the straightaway there, just finding the gap.
Isn't that something you do on a subway?
Yeah, that's what you do.
Look at how smooth he is.
The balance of the race car has been just tremendous.
Oh, he's got a good car today. His car is riding over the bumps as good as or better than any car on the track. And he's taking full advantage of it.
Hunter-Reay dumping out the rest of his push to pass here to see if it'll help him. But Dixon not using any of what he's got left, and he's still got over a half a minute left. Doesn't need it. A few more corners to go. Down to turn 11. And still wrestling the wheel. Accelerating these last couple of tricky corners, and a checkered flag for his victory, and a well-earned one here in Detroit. Scott Dixon wins the Detroit Grand Prix.
Good job, man. Yes, boys. Well done, well done. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was awesome.
He sounds like he's just walking around
Probably already thinking about tomorrow. Got to do it again. Victory Lane in a new location. You'll see the victory lap. Get ready for the winner's interview in a minute. Detroit Grand Prix race number 1 is over. Scott Dixon is in the books. He laid 39 of the 70 laps en route to his 42nd career victory, taking a victory lap around the speedway. They've moved Victory Lane to a new spot here. Scott talked about all the money that they try to use to the event to raise. The Scott Fountain, one of the historic landmarks here at Belle Isle, will be prominently featured in the Victory Lane celebration. As you see Scott now moving into that tie for 3rd all time with Michael Andretti for IndyCar wins, behind only A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti. Impressive company.
And he's young enough that he can make a dent on those first two.
For sure.
This is a beautiful piece of property here, isn't it? It really is a nice race.
Well, golf course and a zoo and a nice sandy beach that's over there. I drove around the whole complete facility when I left the other day.
I think the water might be a little bit cold for going.
Well, for a Canadian, it's fine. It's just fine. I think it's great.
Yeah. So there you see the fountain and the victory podium awaiting Scott Dixon, who will turn in here just past turn 10 and roll up to an awaiting crew.
He's going to run out of fuel. He spent so much extra time on the circuit.
That's a good point, because if you're close on fuel, you might not make it.
I think they'll figure out a way to get him there.
What a beautiful setting. Look at that fountain.
Going to be interested to see how worn out he is as Chip Ganassi comes along.
There's the man who likes winners.
Yes.
I don't think he'll be worn out. They spend so much time in the gym now.
I know, but this is a pounding race circuit.
It's a very good point you made, Alan. That it's taken them a while to get to this point, but they are now where they want to be.
Scott Dixon getting the congratulations for the second time here from Chip Ganassi, and of course he goes right over to the crew. There's no question it was a team effort today. Scott, you had a big smile this morning knowing that you had found the sweet spot on the car, so now congratulating the crew. It made it that much easier to execute. You could take your time, especially patience early on.
Yeah, it was big. You know, it's you know, I can't thank PNC enough. PNC Bank came on board this year, and you know they've had a lot of support this season early on, and you know it's nice to get that first win out of the way. You know, we came up a little short in the last few races, but super proud of this team. You know, Honda's been working extremely hard to bounce back after last week, and you know just have almost a lockout there. I think the top 4 positions maybe for Honda. So just super proud of the team. This is awesome. It's always good to be back in winner's circle. Right now in the Prix IndyCar Series, man, the competition is just so tough.
You had to ride behind Marco Andretti for a while. You knew the pit stop was an opportunity. So when he pits, that's when you have to go full gas and then hope for a good stop, and you got both.
Yeah, just for one lap. You know, we tried to save a bit of fuel. We wanted to get off the reds as soon as possible, but we wanted to get that overlap on Marco, and we were just kind of biting our time there. And lucky enough, you know, the pit stop, as always, from the PNC Bank guys here, just fantastic and able to snap that out of there. But I'm bummed. Emma and Poppy and Tilly aren't here. My mum's over, but they're back in Indianapolis. So big shout out to them, and you know, wish maybe they can come up for tomorrow's race.
All right, congratulations, Scott. And again, when you have a car that good and a team this confident on a double race weekend, that spells trouble for the others.
A perfectly executed race on everyone's part. So Scott Dixon is the winner of round 1 of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader. Another one to come tomorrow. There you look. It was in fact the top 6, and 7 of the top 8 were badged with Honda engines today.
And we talked about the drivability. Honda seems to have a little bit more drivability, Eddie, getting through the tight turns on street circuits. We saw Chevrolet winning on their permanent road circuits. Tomorrow, though, I'm sure Chevy will go to work, and we'll see what happens.
A couple of notes. Marco Andretti only his second top 5 since the race in Southern California in 2015. And Spencer Pigot with his 5th career top 10 and his first since here in Detroit a year ago. Graham Rahal, Santino Ferrucci, the only 2 to not finish the race. And we check in with Rick DeBrule.
Yeah, standing here with Ryan Hunter-Reay at a great finish, second place, but when you got out of the car, you were shaking your head like just a little bit more. How hard was it trying to catch Scott in those last few laps?
It was really hard, and he's, that guy's one of the best in the business, so I knew it was going to be tough. We had a good pace on him through 1, 2, 3, 4, like on the restart. Then after that, just sitting in his dirty air, I just couldn't make up the gap. But you know, today we did a great job on strategy based on pace. You know, we knew we had a fast race car, so we got that horse out on its own and started running. It was really good that way. Qualifying lap after qualifying lap, I felt like I was out there for 2 hours doing qualifying runs. So fun day behind the wheel. Just came up a bit short in the end, and I'm just happy we have a fast race car here. It's been a while since that's been the case. So great job to the 28 DHL team. Pit lane again, these guys have been awesome. At Indy, they were fantastic. So hopefully we can build the momentum, roll it into tomorrow.
All right, let's talk about the last restart. You're close at that point in time. Did you think you had anything? Although you're pushed to pass, you had a little bit less than he had. Yeah,
the best run I had was coming after the green, coming out of 2, out of the 4th gear left-hander here. Had I had to overtake at that point, which you're not allowed to use it at that point, I think we could have got a good run on him. Got past him, that's another story, but would have been a good fight. I was hoping to make it interesting. We were holding position there for a bit. You know, I thought this might be interesting if he starts to fall off a little bit, but you know, he's Scott Dixon. He's not falling off, so another win for him. I thought today might be our day based on how fast the middle of the race was for us. We logged fastest race lap, had the quickest car out there, and I had my head down, so came up just short.
All right, well, that means another race tomorrow. Just one more position he can improve.
Yep, 42 wins. Big milestone for Scott Dixon. He and the team celebrating in victory lane. We'll hear from more of the top finishers in today's race at Detroit. And look ahead to tomorrow's race number 2 of the Detroit Grand Prix doubleheader coming up. The double checkers for Scott Dixon. Can he make it double checkers this weekend in the Motor City? So a look at what unfolded in this Detroit Grand Prix race number 1 today. Marco Andretti started on the pole, taking the top spot in qualifying for the first time since 2013. He led the second most laps on the day. Ryan Hunter-Reay was a 3-stop strategy player, wound up finishing in second. The winner Dixon made 2 stops. The top of the scoreboard dominated by Honda power.
And really not only dominated by Honda, but also a lot of Andretti cars up there, which is great. Graham Rahal, unfortunately, ended up having a mistake. Not sure if just clipping the wall on the inside, the curb on the inside, excuse me.
But what a race he was having right there.
Huge impact. We're worried about the car, whether that car will be able to go tomorrow. If not, they'll bring out the spare for race number 2 tomorrow afternoon at 3:30.
Rahal was okay, obviously, and climbed from the car. Then Santino Ferrucci in his first IndyCar start, clipped by Charlie Kimball at the end of a high-speed straightaway. Watch this.
So lucky he didn't hit the car of Zach Veach, who was just in front of him. That's 170-mile-an-hour end of the straightaway.
And he's not only is he lucky he didn't hit the car, he's lucky they had prepared the track properly with all those tires.
Scott Dixon pitted a lap later than Marco Andretti on the first round of pit stops. He went from second to first on that exchange, and that essentially was the difference on the day.
Track position.
2 seconds quicker, and what a difference that made.
Yep, and Hunter-Reay with the 3-stop strategy, a great drive for him, but in the end, Scott Dixon, the winner, over Ryan Hunter-Reay by 1.8 seconds. Jan?
And you just mentioned that move on the first round of pit stops. Of course, it was Marco Andretti. Your first stint was perfect. You did everything you needed to do on the Reds, but then Scott Dixon had a little faster stop and waited a lap longer. Then it was tougher for you, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I had a bit of a tough time getting up on the blacks in the second stint, but it's sort of a double-edged feeling right now. I mean, the racer in me is very bummed because you hate to go backwards, and you want a podium at least, but I guess we have to be happy. You know, the AutoNation car ran good all day, and you know, we stayed with the fast guys all day. It's just not fast enough, so I think we need to do our homework tonight and look at where we can improve tomorrow.
Well, that's the key. Now that you have this data and you have all these cars to draw off of, do you have an idea what you might like to change for tomorrow?
No, I mean, I still want to try to get another pole, and then from there I think we need to detune the car a bit more because it was a bit too on edge. Still almost a qualifying car for the race, so a bit too aggressive.
How about the fatigue today? It was a little bit cooler, but you were working hard all day. Sometimes, like your teammate Ryan Hunter-Reay said, at some points it was like doing qualifying laps every lap.
Yeah, it's tough, but you know, that's what we get paid to do. I mean, that's why we work out so hard, and you know, the tough part's going to be waking up a bit sore tomorrow and doing it again.
All right. Have the best of luck tomorrow. Marco Andretti again here talking to the team thinking, ooh, that was close.
Well, Alexander Rossi, number 2 of that Andretti crowd that finished. You had a great pass of Marco at the end of the day. Overall, how would you rate this race for your car?
Any day that you're on the podium is good. I think the Ruoffo mortgage car had a lot of potential in the beginning and the middle of the race, but just the way the cards fell, we never came out of the pit lane in clean air. We were always behind a slower car, so we couldn't utilize the clean air, new tire kind of performance, which I think cost us a bit, but ultimately at the end, when we were all bunched up there with 17 to go after that last restart, I didn't have enough for the two in front. So we'll look at that. Fortunately, one of the cars that beat me is my teammate, so we can analyze what they did differently, but all around a good day for the 27 team and a great day for Andretti Autosport.
So let's talk about that pass towards into the race that you did on Marco. Walk us through it.
Yeah, I had been a lot stronger than him through 1 and 2 really all day, and push to pass wasn't available at that point, which was good for me, so he wasn't able to use it to defend, and I could just do a classic kind of draft. I went to the outside to outbrake him, and we were able to make it happen. We touched a little bit, but it's just hard racing.
There you go, Alexander Rossi coming in third in the middle of that Andretti threesome up front.
And Rossi, the new championship leader after today's Detroit Grand Prix Round 1. You look at his season so far, and 11th the worst in all of them, top 5s otherwise. He's going to be a threat for the title all the way down to Sonoma.
He'll be a threat at every race, but what a performance he did at Long Beach. He qualified on pole, outran everybody, and he won.
And that double point, Indianapolis 500, 32nd to 4th, may be the key to his whole championship. Back downstairs to Rick.
Yeah, we're standing here on a pretty empty pit lane at this point. Everybody else has kind of moved off, but we're here with Takuma Sato, former Indy 500 winner. Not a bad finish today, but did you have anything for those guys ahead?
Well, not quite. I think we still need to work out, for those guys. And I think we had a solid day, under the difficult circumstances. We had some technical issue on day 1, but I think we fought really strong to get to the qualify in 7th, which is okay. It's having had a pole last year. Me and Graham in the share the pole last year. It's a little bit high expectation. It's kind of a little disappointed, but I think what we got is today. I think we maximize it, and we still need to squeeze just a small % of the speed. But I think we found something positive today. That's something we can transfer to tomorrow's qualify.
All right. So what do you do to get that little extra bit to catch up with those 4 cars ahead of you?
Nowadays, of course, otherwise it's everything fixed. It's just completely spec. And given where we are today for the street course, everybody maxed out the downforce. So the only difference is for the light height and jumper and spring package and some of the geometry and alignments. So those are little things. It does make a little huge difference in the end of the day. So we're still searching. We are still not comfortable to our speed and balance, but I think surely, but slowly, I think we're getting to the front.
All right, Takuma Sato and the team have to figure that out tonight because they're coming back tomorrow. Jan?
Will has been signing some autographs, I think not so much for today, but still kind of living in a way. Only a week ago was the Indy 500. How much of a difference today, and what were you lacking?
Yeah, we're just kind of lacking pace, and I think it's the Hondas just have a different power curve which suits this track. Obviously we got good top end, which is great for Indy and some of these longer tracks with longer straights, but I've drove pretty hard for 7th place today.
And what have you learned that you can apply? That's the unique thing about the duel in Detroit, is that you got to do over tomorrow. Do you have some ideas of how you can crank it up?
Our car is pretty good. Like, the handling is not bad. It's like not much I could pick out that would gain us speed. I think if we could just qualify a little better, like top 4 would make a big difference. You could do something from there with strategy.
Well, you certainly are the person who knows how to qualify on pole, so best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Will Power, the top finishing Chevrolet-powered entry today. He in 7th place. Signing away. And Scott Dixon still smiling away. And why not? Terrific drive and a victory in the Detroit Grand Prix today for Dixon. Back live downtown Detroit and the raceway at Belle Isle Park. Detroit Grand Prix race number 1 in the books, won by Scott Dixon. Chip Ganassi and Charlie Batch there, Grand Marshal for the race, along with public address announcer Larry Henry. And the podium celebration continuing. Josef Newgarden, no podium today, but a top 10. Rick?
Yeah, standing down here with Josef Newgarden. I have to say, I've known Josef for a while, and you sounded pretty frustrated when after you got out of that car today. Explain the frustration and how you feel.
It's a lot of work for not the greatest performance. We got a top 10, which is good, but we don't come here to finish 9th. So I'm proud of everyone at Team Chevy and certainly Team Penske. This is our home turf, so we wanted to do well here, but we just didn't have enough today. We really tried our best. I think our maximum was probably 5th or 6th, but that's all we had. So it was a ton of work. It was very physical. I'm worn out. So we got to try and do something. We're going to experiment a little bit tonight, see what we can do tomorrow, and hopefully not just have the same story when we show up.
All right, let's talk about how hard is it after Indy to come here and do 2 very physical races. You've got one out of the way and you still have another one tomorrow.
Yeah, it is. It's physical. I mean, these things are hard to drive. It depends on how much caster you're running in the car, but if you're running a lot of caster, it's physical. I mean, there's no power steering in these things, so you're pretty worn out. This place tests you. I mean, you have to be up on the wheel constantly, because if you're not, you see what happened to Ray Hall in turn 13. The thing will bite you immediately and go straight into the wall. So you're constantly trying to hold on to this vehicle, not get it to buck you in the wall. But our Hitachi car was smooth. I mean, it took care of me for the most part today. We just got to figure out how to get it going a little bit better. I couldn't quite have the speed of those leaders today, so we got to figure out what we got to do to find that tomorrow.
All right, they'll be doing some searching tonight. Josef Newgarden and the rest of the Penske crew.
Yeah, going to be a long night for all of the teams here as they turn these cars around, strip them down, re-prep them to qualify and race tomorrow. Some teams with more work to do than others. You heard Josef mention the Graham Rahal crash. The Rahal Letterman Lanigan team already at work, beginning to see what has to be done to get ready to race tomorrow. That, as you can see by the marks on the side, still the car that was crashed. And we'll see after they get into it if they're going to repair that car or have to bring something else out to race tomorrow. So the championship standings after today. Now this is before the Indy 500, which is a double point race for the Verizon IndyCar Series Championship. You see Josef Newgarden leading, Rossi, Bourdais, Will Power down in 7th place. Then after Indy and after Detroit Grand Prix race number 1, now it's Rossi who's the leader, and Scott Dixon vaults all the way up to 2nd.
You always think about the Indianapolis 500 as one individual race. So you're going to go for it. If you don't make it, you lose points. You'll say, okay. But the guys that you see after the Detroit GP, Rossi, Dixon, guys that are very smart, very consistent, and now everybody's thinking about the championship.
Not just consistent, you have to be fast.
And the guy who had probably the most difficult day today of a lot of those championship contenders besides Graham Rahal, Sebastian Bourdais, who wound up finishing in 3rd place and took a tumble of a few spots in the championship. So tomorrow, what do we expect? More of the same, a lot different? Well, here's the one variable for tomorrow's race. There's a little rain in the forecast, and rain means one thing on a racetrack: chaos.
Chaos and slippery.
Yeah.
Rain is the one thing that Dixon and Hunter Ray really don't want to happen, because their car was hooked up today. But everybody's going to go back and they're going to tinker with it, and they're going to try to do something different than they did today. As Josef Newgarden just said, they didn't like with the package that they had, but if it's wet, it's chaos. It's a square root of chaos.
But when you say tinker, they'll tinker on what they had today if tomorrow's dry. But tomorrow, if you're running in the rain, all the springs, the shock settings, everything changes. Who will have the best race setup tomorrow if it does rain? Who's the best driver in the rain? There's a different line on the racetrack than there is for wet and dry. All those things go with it. I don't know. Did you like racing in the rain?
I love the rain, but I'll go back to that one thing you've been saying the whole weekend: drivability.
Yes.
If your engine is smooth, if you can put the power down, that makes a world of difference when it's wet.
Yeah.
All right, so as far as takeaways from today, obviously Honda with the upper hand. Strategy, 2-stop, 3-stop. Well, we saw Dixon win the race on 2 stops, but Hunter Ray finished a close 2nd on 3. What does that tell us for tomorrow?
It's up in the air, because it all comes down to where the yellow falls. If the yellow falls at all, we thought we were going to have a green race for most of the day until some things started happening. It all depends on how the day plays out and where you are at the end. But you said something that's so true. We came down to a couple of last restarts. You just have to be fast, because there's no more strategy involved. You need something that is fast and you can drive.
I love that. I love when a race comes back down to who is quickest and who is willing to take the most risks. And today,
it was Dixon.
Dixon.
And I come away with something that Dixon said in Victory Lane that resonates so true. When you watched qualifying today and the times, and when you watch the race and the outcome, this series is so competitive right now that the smallest of things are making a big difference. 2 seconds on a pit stop. That's what got Dixon the lead over Marco Andretti. And saving fuel while keeping his track position enabled them to sit there for that less time. The smallest things are making a big difference. Things are so competitive right now. Someone's going to execute perfectly tomorrow. The question is who and how.
And the other neat thing about this series, and I think you said it in the Open, Eddie, is that we go from a super speedway, 230 miles an hour, Indianapolis last week, to a bull ring here in the sense it's a very tough type of road course down here in the streets. And next week it's a 1.5 mile high banked oval rather at Texas. Drivers have to be so able to drive different types of cars, different tracks. I think they're the most talented drivers in the world.
You okay?
Wow.
You okay for a doubleheader tomorrow? Do I take you back and get you fueled up and get you ready to go?
I think I could make it through another one of these.
Okay, that's good. That's good. We're ready for that. All right, well, great race today. A lot of good racing, a lot of action up front. Congratulations to Scott Dixon on winning the 42nd victory of his IndyCar career. And tomorrow it's race number 2, Detroit Grand Prix presented by Steel at 3:30 Eastern here on ABC. And, of course, followed by game number 2 of the NBA Finals. So a great day tomorrow here on the network. Up next, world news or your local news, except on the West Coast. So Marco Andretti started on the pole, but Scott Dixon's team executed their tactics with precision, both on the track and on pit road. He got the lead away on the first set of pit stops, kept off the wall unlike some others, and wound up scoring a very big victory. He'll be here very late in the night tonight, fixing the cars up, and we'll do it again tomorrow at 3:30 here on ABC. Scott Dixon, Detroit Grand Prix race number 1 winner. See you tomorrow.
How about a little champagne vibe?